There we go. Holy cow.
Hey.
We are lucky enough to welcome somebody who has been gracious enough to grace us with his presence, Mr. Herb Lawrence. How you doing, Herb?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me in. Thank you for having me, Danny. It's awesome to be on and talking White Sox baseball.
Yeah, about that. Um,
Mm,
yeah, it's been a rough year, and the White Sox are about to get started up here. We got about I don't know 5 minutes or so until the game gets going here. Go ahead and bring that up. Holy cow! Everything's got me discombobulated tonight. I apologize. Um, Anywho, uh, so we have the former executive producer at 670. Now is channel community leader with CHGO Chicago for the White Sox, and previously before that, Locked On Sox as well. Got a busy life there.
Yeah,
So
what hasn't Herb Lawrence done?
yeah,
Seems like
um,
you've been out there doing everything.
I'll
I'm just
say
old.
yeah, we've all been doing stuff for a long time at this point. I will point out that the most important of your qualifications is Wheaton North Falcon. I will stand up for that. Um, so let's just. I kind of wanted to start off because I mean, everybody knows who you are on White Sox Twitter. I kind of wanted to go through like how you got where you ended up. Um, so you went to Wheaton North. You graduated a few years after I did, but where did you go after that?
Well, after let's see, '96, I graduated, and so out of high school, I went to a little college called Carroll College in Waukesha, Wisconsin. think it's Carroll University now. Got homesick, went back real quick, went to COD, went to Western, got kicked out of there because you got to do homework. Apparently, ridiculous. Instead of just drink every day. And then I went to Illinois Media School in 2000, graduated from there, and I was just looking for an internship at the score in 2000, but I didn't have enough time left in my schooling because that was a 10-month school, and I had like 2 months left, and so I just jumped into the score. Jesse Rogers, who is now the ESPN Chicago like baseball writer, he was our program director back then, and instead of giving me an internship, he gave me Illinois football, doing the play or doing the board hopping, so just pressing for the commercials and such. And so that's how I got my foot in the door there, impressed enough. So I eventually got up to like Les doing his overnight show, and then Jonathan Hood, his first show, and then eventually Mike North and Doug Lafone. And then I got like burnt out. I was like 23, 24 at the midday show, like the top executive producer there. And I was like, ugh, too much. I was only making like $24,000 too. So I was taking all this stress of the job and then only $24,000. It was like I was broke. And so my friend told me to go to Career Builder. I went to Career Builder, sucked there, sucked at another sales job. And then I feel like, ever seen the Glenn Ross scene where the Alec Baldwin's like, uh, sales is a tough job. You know, I felt like that, and I did not get in there. Like I felt like I was a failure at sales. So I was like, I'm going back to something more familiar. Went back to the score for like 2005 until I left for San Diego in 2016, and then went to San Diego for a year. Did the Mighty 1090 producing out there. Did some San Diego Padres games and some San Diego Gulls board hopping. And then I was like, I miss the family, and then moved back in with Cherie, my sister, who Ian,
Yeah.
um, came back to Chicago and Chicago area, and lived with her for like a year. And then I was like trying to get back into the score, which I did eventually. And then I stayed at the score until this opportunity came last year, where I was kind of getting burnt out by the score. I love Lawrence's show, which I was executive producer of his show before I left, but I didn't like all the stuff that came after that. And so then I just pretty much was like, man, I wish I could do a job where I'm just talking the White Sox all day. Because at that time, I was still doing lockdown Sox with Chris Tannehill. Actually, we had just retired from lockdown Sox in December of 2021. And then I got the call in January of 2022 from my current boss, the founder of the NVR, Brandon Spano, and he wanted to talk to me about doing CHGO, which was a fledgling or a brand new company, opening in Chicago in March of 2022. And I was like, who is this guy? Why is this guy giving my dream job? And why is he putting all this money in front of me? This is weird. And I was like, I had to call around. I was like, is this guy for real? What's going on? Why is he doing it for me? And everybody's like, yeah, DMVR is going off. PHNX was going off at the time too in Phoenix. And I was like, I don't look a gift horse in the mouth. And I just made sure that I vetted, the company and made sure that I didn't make a mistake. My friend, I don't know if you guys remember Webio back in the day.
Oh,
I was just going to bring that up.
Yeah. One of my friends, Matt Weber, who was a producer at The Score on the Mike North show, like whatever that time was, got called over to Webio when that started. He was a young player, a young producer. Now he's a big time host on Webio. And I called him up because that failed because the guy didn't have enough money. He was doing a Ponzi scheme, whatever. And so he's like, yeah, just check it out, make sure you're good, and you're, believe in yourself, and you have confidence in what you're doing, and you should be good. And so that's that. And the White Sox have proceeded with 2 terrible years that I've been covering since that with Sean Anderson and Vinny Duber. But that's the fun of it. When covering it with Sean and Vinny, we can make fun of the team, and our producer Stephen Nicholas also contributes to our fun, where we make this seasons that we've been covering not about necessarily the team, which we'll get into and we'll cuss them out every once in a while, but we, do a world, more of a global perspective on baseball and how we're feeling and how the fans are feeling and our fans pretty much rock with us all the time, no matter what. So we've been blessed to have the platform to do it. And then, just because the team is bad doesn't mean that we have to be bad. And so that's the approach that we take here at CHGO White Sox.
Yeah. I mean,
please go ahead, Ian.
Oh, I just, when you left for San Diego, I was like, oh, well, I haven't talked to Herb in a really long time, and then we lost you. I didn't think you were going to come back, but then you came back a couple of years later, and I was, it's I enjoyed the Lawrence Holmes show. It was, I enjoyed listening to it, and you're a big part of that, and then you moved over to CHGO, and I was like, all right, cool. Well, at least everybody's sticking around, because we've lost a couple of people that have dipped out for good, and for better for them. I mean, like Wayne Randazzo and stuff like that. Just ending up in a really solid place, and I'm glad that you ended up back here.
Yeah, me too. I said I was going to go to San Diego for at least a year just to try it out. That was out of my comfort zone because of I like to just be content, and I'm be fine with the rest of my life with being content. Don't have to have the highest of highs. Just, not having too many lows and not too many highs, and just right in the middle. I'm good with that. But I know every once in a while I got to break out of that comfort zone, because then I feel like my life is getting wasted if I don't try to do something different. And that's what San Diego was. I visited there in like 2003, and I was like, man, it would be great to live here. And then I was thinking, I was like 36 at the time when I did move to San Diego. I was like, it'd be a damn shame if I didn't do what I wanted to do just because I'm scared to do it, type of thing. And so I was like, you know what, I'm going to save up for a couple dollars, do this Uber/Lyft thing, and then move on out there and see how it's all about. And that's a beautiful, awesome city. I love that city. If I ever had a chance to retire there, I would do it. But, family, you miss family. Like, I remember driving one time in San Diego. I was, had the beach like 2 blocks away from me. Everything was great. But I was like, man, just something's missing. And, even though I don't see my family often, I see them like 4 or 5 times a year, through the holidays and birthdays and such. The fact that they were like 4 hours away via flight, I was like, oh my God, that's, it's too much. And so I had to move back and, be content in Chicago, which, there's worse places to be. And it's the best city other than San Diego that I've ever been in. And so I love the city and I love Chicago, but man, that San Diego experience was once in a lifetime. I had to do it. And I was like, if I'm on my deathbed and I don't do it, I'll be really pissed if I didn't go out and try it out. And I tried it out. It was great.
Yeah, that the San Diego area, like, if you wanna live there, man, you better be making a little bit of money, though. It is definitely an expensive place to live for sure. I had the
Mhm.
opportunity to visit once when I was in the military, big Navy town there on
Oh
the
yeah.
coast. Uh, so, yeah, it is absolutely gorgeous. I have to agree with you. If I had the opportunity to maybe live there and retire there, that would be fantastic. But you gotta put away a nice chunk of coin to be able to live comfortably in the San Diego area, or find that area where you can stretch your means, if you will. But that's far and few between in the San Diego area. So, but good
Yeah.
for you for
I
doing what you had to do, man.
I lived in what you're talking about. I lived in Imperial Beach, which is just by San Ysidro, which is the last city you get to until you get to Tijuana. So I was down there. I was way, way down there. And from my porch, I can see Tijuana at night lit up. During the day I could see it too, but it's just mostly mountains. But yeah, I lived in the cheapest area in San Diego, and I still had a roommate because it's expensive as hell. I think I paid like $700, $800 a month with a roommate, and it was like, golly, I understand why people want to live here, but also, man, how do people actually come up in San Diego? Because, whew, I could not imagine. Still, I was like, like I said, 36 years old with a roommate. I was like, this is great, but I don't, want to be having a roommate for the rest of my life. I want to live independent, or my roommate be my wife or my fiance, like it is now.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the real estate prices down there, it is absolutely absurd. So, it's like especially when you're coming from somewhere outside of San Diego and moving there,
Hmm.
you just look at the prices and you're like, okay, I don't know how I'm going to manage to do that without signing away my life. And that's pretty much kind of what you have to do if you're moving into that place. So let's move over to the White Sox here.
Hmm.
White Sox are starting their actually right now. They got the first batters up right now, and Tuki Tucson is down 3-0.
But of
So
course,
Actually, this is batter number two. Tukey has got a man on first at the moment.
oh yeah, he does.
Yeah, he does. He
Wonderful.
does. And
So
he just walked another one on.
I've
oh my
been,
goodness.
I mean,
Tukey's
besides
been
what's
great, but
going
that's been
on,
the big thing is he's got to keep those walks down.
yeah, my point exactly here. So I've been pleasantly surprised. I was always kind of a fan of Tukey when he was obviously I was a fan when he got drafted by the Diamondbacks, but then he got moved over to Atlanta, and I always liked the upside of Tukey, and he struggled there, and when we picked him up, I was like, if we can get him to do what he does and get him to be consistent with it, we could have a good pitcher on our hands. And between him and Clevenger, who's starting tomorrow, SP5 as he's called on White Sox Twitter. So next year, the White Sox are going to have some openings on their in their rotation. Do you think that either of those guys is going to end up sticking around and being in the rotation next year?
Well, start with Clevenger first. He has a weird situation with himself. I think they have a mutual option for next year. It's only like $12 million.
Yeah.
So the way he's been pitching this year, even though it's been limited, and I think he's still under 100 innings pitched for the season, but his last couple starts since coming off of the IL, and that's a big problem too. He's been on the IL multiple times this year, and for long stretches of time. He has an interesting thing. Do I run away from a team that more than likely will say, I want that mutual option picked up? Because the White Sox, as you said, have a lot of openings. They have at least three openings in their starting rotation with only Dylan Cease and Michael Kopech signed for next year. And so he can just say, I will check in and say that 12 million is good. But I think he's gonna go and opt out because he on the free agent market. If people look past the off the field stuff, which I don't know, it's uncertain if they will. He'll probably make more than $12 million on the free agent market if he keeps on pitching like this. And the clubhouse apparently has no culture. It's a bad clubhouse. I don't know how he gets along with people. It seemed like he was getting along with people swimmingly, but he's got a bad culture. Like AJ Pollock, or he like had a $13 million option he could have taken and just been back with the White Sox, but he chose to get out and get his $8 million up front, yeah, or his $5 million up front, and tried to make $8 million off of the free agent market, which he only made 7 back with the Seattle Mariners, who are in town right now. So he kind of lost that, but he also didn't want to be here. It was easy for him to just say, "Yeah, let me come back." So I think Clevenger ultimately opts out and goes to free agency, which creates a thing for the White Sox and Tukey and both Jesse Schultz. I think one of those two guys is going to be on the starting rotation next year, just because I think the White Sox are cheap. We all know that. And I think they saw what Jesse Schultz, for the most part, and they'll erase that Colorado start that happened yesterday. And they'll say, well, Jesse Schulten's been pretty good. So we'll give him and Tukey Toussaint a chance to battle for the 5th spot in our rotation. But that still leaves 2 open spots. And the free agent list looks nice. Starting pitchers at the top, really good. They can go and get, I'm not going to say this name, so I'm going to leave the top guy out of there because I know they're not going to get him. And so Marcus Stroman's hurt. They probably won't get him. Clayton Kershaw's probably going back. The guys I think they're going to try to get are like Hyun-Jin Ryu type of guys, or Alex Wood, or Martin Perez, like mid-tier guys who won't break the bank, but will fill out the rotation pretty fine. So they'll get 2 of those guys either via trade or via the free agency to fill out the top of the or to fill out the rotation. But then you have question mark Dylan Cease. Like, is he this guy that showed up in 2023, or the sub 2 to 5 ERA guy that showed up in 2021 or 2022? Sorry, I'm getting the years mixed up. Or do you get the Michael Kopech that's been inconsistent his whole damn career? Or do you get the guy who's like finally wakes up and pitches well? You don't know. There's a lot of question marks with the White Sox all throughout the team. And the starting rotation is the biggest bugaboo because for the most part, the position players are all coming back except for maybe a second baseman and a catcher. And that's it. Everybody else is coming back. They're run that stuff back immediately. And so I think they need to find either Tukey or Jesse to be the 5th starter, which I disagree with, but I know the White Sox, they won't go out and get 3 starters in this free agent market because that's a lot of money to them. So I'm going to be realistic and say they're going to choose one, if not both of these guys, to return as the starting rotation members.
Yeah, you threw out some interesting names there. Not necessarily names that interest me, but just names that are possibilities for next year, and within the free agent market. And I don't disagree with you there, and especially when you look at they did get some top end talent in Double-A in some of the recent trades, but the Triple-A starting pitching staff has just been absolutely brutal. And with Martin, with TJ, and then Burke, who both of those guys you were hoping to take steps, and one's got TJ, and then the other one we don't know what injury he's got. It's been a myriad of injuries throughout the entire year, and then he just disappeared off the face of the earth. Speaking of Sean Burke, I'm pretty much with you right there, thinking that it's they're going to have to fill through free agency, and I'm almost pretty sure as well that Clevenger will probably try and find a spot elsewhere as well. So.
Does it
and
not
want
feel
them
like
to. That'd be great if he does too.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I wouldn't complain.
It feels like a broken record, when you talk about Sean Burke and Davis Martin and waiting for guys to make that next step. And we saw some really good things out of Davis Martin when he was up with the MLB club last season. And here we are thinking, here's a kid that can possibly do some things for us, and not so much. And at least Burke just pretty much disappeared it just feels like the last 3 or 4 years of this White Sox club, we cannot catch a break. There's like when when we get our uh what oh wow, I just had a ridiculous brain fart here. Um
Who are you talking about?
Herb Schneider, Herm Schneider.
Herm Schneider.
And sorry. When Herm Schneider left, it was like, God, I don't know why. I just could not pull that out. When he left, it just seemed like everything went down the tubes. I mean, we enjoyed years and years and years of, I don't know, maybe luck. Maybe Herm had some kind of special trick up his sleeve, but this team was one of the least injured teams in the world. And the minute he was gone, it was like everything was, it's a crapshoot now. You can't, you can pick a name out of a hat, and that guy's gonna end up injured at some point. So yeah, difficult times, and it looks like just to kind of piggyback off of what Mr. Lawrence here is saying, not to get Herb and Herm confused, but yeah, seeing that there are some holes to fill. You hope, and you hang your hat on dreams, hoping that the White Sox can find something of value out there on the free agent and trade market, because hanging our hat on guys in the system right now is it's a difficult task.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Yeah, I was thinking that most like it would be time for. And I know he's been injured and he's kind of still young. The Jarrett Kellys, the Dahlquist of the world would be developed by now and be on the door knocking for the league, but apparently no.
well, I mean, Kelly has taken some steps this year, and he's put together some respectable outings, but they're in a piggyback role or in relief, so
Yeah,
that's
he's
not
been out of the bullpen, so
yeah, not
it's
exactly what you're looking for. Thompson is, the other night I think he gave up like 8, 9, 10 runs or something like that, and he's hit or miss. And Dahlquist is even more miss than hit, in an 80-20 split. Um, yeah, it's just it's not good. I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to hang your hopes on Nate Fisher in AAA? Absolutely not. It's just it's been ugly. But then you look to the quote unquote fourth starter in the rotation. You got Michael Kopech, and he hasn't been able to get out of his own way this year. And I don't know exactly what's wrong with him. Do you have some theory as to why he's having issues?
I think that he especially is adverse to contact. And maybe for good reason, because when he does throw, fastballs down the middle, it gets rocked, it gets crushed. And so he does not want the batter to touch the balls. And that's why you see the high strikeouts. That's why you see the high walks. And unlike his counterpart, Dylan Cease, for the most part, especially last year when he was leading the league in walks, he got the job done. He got out of those situations. And he would have a steady demeanor with himself, not going too high or too low with Dylan Cease in 2022. Michael Kopech's whole career, I think he's way too emotional, way too. And this is what happened to Dylan Cease back early in his White Sox career, where he would be cruising and then have one bad inning and it would derail the whole start. Michael Kopech kind of does that, but his batting is in the first inning, where he has like a 6+ ERA. And so he has that really bad first inning, and then he calms down second, third, fourth, and then the fifth, again, another really bad inning for him, especially this year. And so I don't know if he needs to go and see a sports psychologist. I don't know if he needs to go and just decompress and have more of an effort attitude towards pitching, because right now he's still a thrower. You see the glimpses of him pitching. He had a stretch back in May and into June where he was just throwing strikes, filling up the strike zone. I think 10 strikeouts in one start, 9, 10, and then 9 again, with only 4 walks in those 4 starts. That is the glimpse that the White Sox are like, okay, there we go. Here we go. This is Michael Kopech about to go from one point to the next, become the pitcher that we needed to be. No, it's been really bad in the second half where he's still kind of in his own head because he doesn't really have a secondary pitch he can go to consistently and get people out. The slider works every once in a while, the curve works every once in a while, but it's not consistent. So now he has to find the fastball, and the command on the fastball has been hit or miss too. So he's just like, I have nothing. The confidence you can tell when he's out there is little to none. And so I don't know what the White Sox need to do. I know they have a sports psychologist on hand. And I know they have Ehats who can work with them with the core velocity belt and all the good stuff. But it doesn't matter until Michael Kopech gets this fixed, gets the brain fixed, and realize he has some of the best stuff in the game. Fastball, when it's up there, electric. It's got some nice rise, and the hitters tell you that he can't mess with that. They can't mess with him. I don't remember. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember the Yankees start last year. I think it was in New York City, and he dominated the Yankees. The Judges, the Stantons of the world dominated him. That's what I need to see. I think he needs to see that for himself. Look at the tape and say, I'm that guy. I'm not the guy giving up 4 solo shots to the Cincinnati Reds when we're winning 16-4. I'm the dude who could strike out the Yankees with their motorist row of people, and no one can touch my stuff when I throw it over the plate. I don't care if they hit it. They hit it, so be it. Next batter. And he has to have that type of mentality where, F it, I'm the best. I'm going to throw this ball. And maybe, like Dylan Cease, make a poem, a terrible poem about your slider. Make a terrible poem about your curveball, your four-seam fastball. And just be confident that you are the best person on the mound for that time, and throw your pitches with conviction, because it seems like half the time these are non-competitive pitches that he's throwing, especially when he gets to 2 strikes. I think he's like too scared of giving up a hit with 2 strikes instead of, I got 2 strikes, I'm gonna attack this guy. That guy should be scared of me because I'm Michael Kopech type of attitude. But I don't think he has that in him right now, and I don't know if he can get that. He has to fake it until he makes it, because that guy has premium stuff, but I don't think he has premium brain or pitcher brain right now, which that's where he needs to go to.
Yeah. I just, as a Sox fan, walking into the stadium at the home opener, and the excitement that we all kind of felt for this team, the new manager, and things were supposed to kind of turn themselves around this year. And Pedro had said all the right things, before the season started. And you walk in and you go, okay, Michael Kopech's taking the hill today. They, the White Sox were coming off of a 2-game split, or I'm sorry, 4-game split against Houston, and there was still this air of like, we're finally gonna do something this year, right? And then Michael Kopech comes in and he gives up that 7 home runs in his, the home opener. And I think, of course, everybody there was deflated. You know what I mean? It was like, this is not the way you want to start your first home game of the season. But at the same time, you talk to folks after the game, and I know I did, and everybody was like, that's not who Michael Kopech is. This is not who we're going to see the rest of the season. And what an unfortunate omen that first start at home was for him this year, because we have seen a lot of that. The dinger is just his biggest Achilles at the moment. So yeah, I can't agree with you more on that one, Herb.
I've got a theory.
Yeah, I just wish he was better.
Yeah, well, yeah, yeah. I just wish
Like,
he was
much
better. Yeah, I've got a theory about him. And like this has kind of been a formulating theory over a while, because a lot of people have been complaining about Rick Hahn with that particular trade, and Yoan Moncada having the health issues, and then Kopech not meeting his expectations either. And my response about Kopech is, he's 100% not the same person that the White Sox got when they traded. If you remember back to when Kopech showed up, he's this powerlifting, for lack of a better term, like frat boy type of guy, power lifter, just testosterone, trying to throw 110 miles an hour. And,
he had an air of cockiness around him when he showed up. There was it wasn't, I should say it was on the verge of cockiness anyway. There was an air of confidence around him that seems to be lacking at the moment. And I think that's kind of what Herb's been trying to touch on with that, going out there and having that mental state to know that he can run over lineups left and right, and he just hasn't done that.
Yeah, I mean, the TJ wore him, obviously probably wore him down a little bit, but then the 2020 thing and whatever he had going on personally off of the field, I mean, obviously we know that he got the divorce and whatever, but I think, whatever was going on with that whole, the whole COVID pandemic in general, whatever it was, I think it just kind of took something out of him, and he's clearly not gotten it back.
Not at all. And that 2021 season where he actually did pitch and they put him in that role where he's like a spot starter / bullpen guy, I think ultimately that's where he's going to be. He's going to be back in the bullpen guy, but back in the bullpen guy with walk issues doesn't work. So he has to find that guy you were talking about, Ian, because that guy wouldn't give a damn. That guy punched his roommate, had to fight. It's half the reason why he got in trouble. He was the minor league pitcher of the year for the whole league, and that's why he rose to the top. When we got him, I was like, man, they got Yoan Moncada, one of the high rising prospects, switch hitting third baseman or switch hitting second baseman when we got him, then went to third, and Michael Kopech, who throws 100. Rick Hahn, congratulations! What an awesome trade. And yeah, that guy, and I 100% agree, Ian. Like it is gone. That killer mentality is gone from Michael Kopech, and whatever he needs to find it, however he needs to find it. I don't know if he found religion or Buddhism or something chill or ayahuasca or whatever he's found. Go the opposite way and find that animal within inside. And you can be the same guy off the field, but on the field, it's all business, and it's all I'm Michael Kopech. These people can't touch me. You think, you think the top pitchers in the world worry about what the guy's gonna do? Like people give up home runs. Garrett Cole gets up home runs every once in a while. It's like, give me the ball. I'm gonna strike the next guy out. That's the mentality Michael Kopech's got to go through because they're all going to give up home runs, but he's given up a lot of home runs, and then he also walks people, and then he also gives up singles and doubles in between. So he needs that killer mentality that just says, you are the best, Michael, and go out there and feel the best. I don't know what they got to do about that first inning thing, like make him pitch a full first inning in the bullpen before to get those runs out, and then act like he's the second inning, or have an opener for him. And just when he comes in, it's the second inning. So we're facing maybe 4, 5, and 6, or facing 7, 8, 9 in the lineup. So it's a little more, you're easing into the ball game. You get a little bit more easier batters to go against. But if they're going to have him in the starting rotation, which it seems they're going to have to have in the starting rotation next year, they have to find a way to refine what he does. Because if he's in the rotation, he's pitching like he has in 2023, that 2024 team is doomed from the start.
Speaking of lack of killer instinct, so this season, who's to blame? Is it the players or is it the management?
No pressure.
Of course, the answer is everything. But if I had to assign more blame, it's 100%. It's like 95% on the management. The players are only here because the management brought them here, and I think the players can see the same thing that we can see, that there's no accountability for failure on this organization. You fail in this organization, you're just going to get reassigned somewhere. Nick Hostetler's still somewhere in the White Sox, and I don't know if he necessarily failed, but I think that his drafts weren't awesome. I think he's still somewhere in the organization. I think I know that the former batting coach, Steverson, is still like the assistant to Kenny Williams. If Dave Wilder didn't get caught up in his whole thing down there in the Dominican, he would still be on the roster. I guarantee. I don't know if he's in jail still. If he gets out of jail, Kenny's looking for him to get a job. I mean, Daryl Boston's still here.
Yeah, even a consulting job.
Yeah, it's all these things that the players can see. Like, if we fail, there's no actual accountability for us failing. The only people who paid with their jobs last year for that 81 and 81 team that was supposed to compete for the AL Central were Super Joe McEwing and Frank Menechino, the hitting coach. Only two guys who got fired. Tony left because of illness. And they could see that, and they said, okay, we're 81 and 81 this year. what are you, the management, going to do to improve our team? And all they that's awesome.
I figured I'd bring him out. If we're going to mention him, I got to bring him out.
Look at that speed. I think he great. But like they have no accountability, and so they're like, "Oh, what are we gonna do in the offseason? How we're gonna get better?" They go out and get Mike Clevenger, jump the market to get Mike Clevenger in November, where they could have waited for him and got comparable or better pitchers with better track records and a better would have been pitching more than 100 innings by now, like a Michael Walcott in San Diego. They could have waited for him and gave him a deal that they gave Mike Clevenger. And then they go out and spend the most money they've ever did in getting Andrew Benintendi. I didn't mind the deal. My partner on CHGO White Sox, Sean Anderson, absolutely hated the deal before it started. Yeah. When it did happen, and every single day since then, he was like, Andrew Benintendi is not the guy you break the bank for to make your highest paid player in franchise history. He says Michael Conforto would have been a better fit, but he would also say the same thing, that Conforto's not the guy you break the bank for either, even though Conforto's having a better offensive year. I don't know if he's having a better defensive year, but like they're getting those two players and then bringing back Elvis to play second base. That's not inspiring. That team on paper, I thought, was an 85-win team. Good enough to win the AL Central, yes, but not good enough to win the championship, to battle with the Yankees, to battle with the Astros or the Mariners or any of the teams in the AL West. So I was like, Rick Hahn's own words when he started this rebuild was, ask me after the parade, and we're going to be competing for multiple championships. They haven't competed for any championship. I mean, they made the playoffs 2 years, won one game in each of those series. That's it. And so I was holding to the standard of, you're going to be competing for championships, not competing for the AL Central title, because what does that get you? Nothing. And so I think that the players see that, us fans see that, and we're like, what are you doing, Rick Hahn? When is it going to be a chance, or Kenny Williams, because he's his boss? And we don't know who's doing these moves right now because they're so secretive and so cloaked. But both of those guys have deserved their firing for a long time. But there's no accountability with Jerry Reinsdorf. So even after this year, where they're currently, I think, 26 games under 500, do you know if they're going to get fired? Any other organization with a 500 record and then 26 under 500, the GM would have been fired last year.
Yeah.
This organization, you don't know if Rick Hahn's going to be fired. More than likely, he's coming back to suck up the next year into 2024. Same thing with Kenny Williams. And so it's them. They put this team together. Thought they would create some culture, and they said there was no leaders. Like Pedro said at the beginning, at the end of the trade deadline, it's like, I thought there were going to be leaders here. There are no leaders here, and I was wrong about that. And that's an indictment on the players themselves and the management that put these players together. And Pedro himself, as the manager, you're supposed to be kind of a leader yourself. But I think it's all encompassing. But if I had to assign the blame, it goes right to Kenny Williams and Rick Hahn.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Obviously, I think the players bear obviously quite a bit of the weight as well. I mean, especially like when you see, when they talk about the getting guys out of the clubhouse that are a problem for the culture, and one of the guys that leaves is Lance Lynn, and when he leaves with a 6.23 ERA or whatever it was he has, and now he's in LA and he's got a 1.43 ERA magically, and he's not giving up any hits to left-handers. He gave up a couple of home runs in the first start or two, but after that, the guy's just been lights out, and it's like, that guy,
one silly tweak, and he looks like Lance Lynn of his prime.
Yeah. I think they took the cutter away from him, or told him to throw it less often.
Yeah, they told him to stick with his four-seamer, as often as possible, and throw that cutter less often. And he's looked like a world beater out there.
Yeah,
the Dodgers fixed him that quickly. Imagine just having an organization. It's like, yeah, let's get him because we see what he's doing wrong and we can fix him, and instantly.
Yeah. Well, I
It's a
mean,
shame.
speaking of,
I mean, not for Lance, but
yeah. So I'm just going to ask you this really quick, and then I want to move on. But Elvis and Yaz, are you
Mhm.
launching them into the sun, or are you letting them stick around until the end of the year?
I would have launched them already. Like the trade deadline on the first, I've been like, okay, it's been real, guys. I hope you guys catch on with the team that's going to playoffs, like you almost did last year, Elvis. And thank you, sirs. It's been real. Because you know they're not going to be here next year. You know that they're not going to reach. Well,
Do
let
you?
me pause. You don't know if Elvis is going to be here next year because the White Sox are the White Sox, and you kind of know that Yasmani's not going to be here, but also they don't have a catcher for next year because you're not going into the next year with either Carlos Perez or Sebi Zavala or even Corey Lee when he comes up eventually, whenever this is going to happen. Yeah, that'll be tough. So I could see the White Sox signing either one of those guys back, but more than likely those guys are gone, and so there's no reason for them to be blocking players that could be getting some time. I would want to see Carlos Perez catch majority of games now instead of Yasmani Grandal, but I know the Sebi Zavala being an IL thing kind of messes that up because they don't really have another catcher available right now. I mean, they could do the Corey Lee thing, but I guess they're waiting for him to get back up to speed from the injury he had with the Astros. So I would want to see one of those guys catch the remainder of the games. And the same thing with Lenyn Sosa. Tim Anderson comes off the suspended list after tomorrow's game. So Wednesday, I can expect that Lenyn Sosa getting very little time going forward because they're going to be playing Elvis Andrus at second base, of course, Tim at shortstop. But Elvis is hitting into the 300s in the last couple months. Who cares? What does that do for you?
Exactly.
Who's that work for? Like, does it work for Elvis? I appreciate him doing well now, but it doesn't work for the White Sox.
Yeah, it's like
Let's see
Yeah.
what
3 months
Lenyn
too late.
Sosa.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's see what Lenyn Sosa can do. Maybe bring up Rodriguez. I don't know, but bring this should be playing exclusively. Like yesterday's game, they had Trace Thompson playing in right field, and I almost choked somebody. It was so infuriating. Like I know what Trace Thompson can do. He's Trace Thompson. He's
He's what,
got
like he's
18
like
walks and
43?
like 15 hits. Yes,
He's like,
I don't need him to ever play for the White Sox again. Oscar Colas should be playing every game in right field, every single game, and the same thing should be happening with Lenyn Sosa at second base. Zach Remillard's a little long too. He's 29. I don't know if he's necessarily
He's a
your
utility
future.
guy.
He bunts a little too much for me. Yeah, exactly. He's a fifth infielder guy. Perfect guy for on a team never starting, just a spot start every once in a while, filling in for Tim or whoever at second base. Perfect. But the lineup yesterday, you had two guys come off the bench who were rookies who provided something in that eighth inning, the 7-run eighth inning they had. You had the game breaking open double by Oscar Colas, 2 RBIs there, and then the 3-run home run by Lenyn Sosa. Both didn't start that game. And so I want to see more of that. I want to see them fail at the major league level. I want to see them succeed at the major league level. And then the pitchers adjust to them and then see how they adjust to those adjustments. And then go into the offseason saying, you know what, I did this, that, and the other badly. I did this, that, and the other well. I'm gonna go and focus on my strengths and also work on my floor so I can be a better, well-rounded player when I hit the major leagues next year. Elvis Andrus is just blocking that. And whenever Gavin Cheap plays right field or Trace Thompson plays right field, he's blocking Oscar Colas from getting more developed here at the majors. And I know Pedro said he cares about wins more than development. Is the most ignorant thing to say on a team that's 26 games below
So
500.
dumb.
Wins mean mean zero right now. Absolutely
we're
zero.
not going to
You got to develop
sacrifice
those guys.
wins. Are you? Yeah. Well, okay.
Yeah, it's just dumb.
Yeah, and
He's becoming Bevington /
Oh.
Jim Boylan's type levels of
yeah, he's those
inane
quotes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the quotes are bad, and it's just silly. And the weird thing is that Colas started against a left-handed pitcher, and then he sat against a right-handed starter. I was trying to figure out what the heck's going on, and that actually leads into the next question perfectly. Is Pedro a one and done for you?
If Rick Hahn comes back, no, he's not one and done. I think Pedro was his handpicked choice. They allowed Rick to get his guy. and he wanted this guy for, I guess for a couple of years now. But I think if Rick comes back, he's never going to fire Pedro, especially since we've seen that Bob Nightingale gave out the deets on contracts. Both Rick Hahn has 1 year left on his contract, and then Pedro has 2 years after this one. So I know Jerry doesn't want to swallow more money, but it's Pedro's like negligible in the money he makes. And so if Rick Hahn comes back, Pedro's coming back. But if it were for me, it's a sunk cost. Like, he can't manage, and whatever that means. Like, the clubhouse was bad, and that's his clubhouse. That's, to me, the most important part of a manager's job, is to make sure the players are ready and prepared to play. They don't need to like each other. They don't need to do anything kumbaya, but you need to be a manager of people, and you need to manage egos and personalities and psychology of man. You need to know. And it seems like this team has gotten worse, which I couldn't believe, gotten worse clubhouse-wise than it was with Tony. And so, yeah, I need for him to be gone, because it was a valiant effort by the White Sox. I initially was like, why are we picking up the Kansas City guy when they don't even want him? Then some people talked to me and said, yeah, he's an actual good baseball guy. He's got more analytic base than a normal manager. I haven't seen it, because he's bunting all the damn time. He's allowing Zach Remillard to bunt all the time. He's walking players indiscriminately. I don't think he's a good in-game manager, which I think is the least important part of the manager's job. But you could see that actually costs sometimes wins and losses with Pedro. And usually, for me, managers are negligible. They neither cost nor help you win games. They can, assist in winning games, but their move should, be by the book for the most part. You're not trying extra stuff. And like you're saying, Ian, putting Oscar Colas in versus a lefty, I like it. Awesome. He has to do that in his regular job.
Right.
But then the next day, it's a righty.
Right.
What's Trace Thompson going to do? And Kate Jones is a righty himself. It's inconsistency. And then at the beginning of the year, he's like, I like Andrew Benintendi at the 3-hitter. No, he's not a power hitter. He's not your best hitter. Whenever you think of the lineup construction, Andrew Benintendi is not the typical 3-hitter, the newfangled 3-hitter, or anything.
He's not.
Then he moves him up. Yeah, then he moves up to second, which I'm fine with that. He's an on-base guy more than anybody on this White Sox lineup for the most part. That was fine. And then when he moved up to the leadoff hitter, his best spot this year, he took him down when Timmy kind of got a little bit hits at the second spot, which is another problem. He took way too long to recognize that Tim wasn't it, and that Tim wasn't doing the job at leadoff, and that was half the problem with the White Sox offense. If he's not going to get on base, and he's going to be bad in the field, and he's going to not get hits, you got to move him. And I would have moved him to 6 or 7 until he proved himself to be the guy that he was in 2022. But no, Pedro was too ingratiated with Tim and doing this, grandfather him into the leadoff spot instead of seeing the problem, recognizing it, talking to Tim like a man and saying, hey, Tim, I can't have you there. If you're not going to hit, I'm going to have to drop you down and line up more than just, why do you drop him from the first to the second spot? To me, that's negligible. Yes, you start off the game as the first hitter, but the second hitter is supposed to also get on base too. So, yeah, they're both in the first inning. So I would have dropped them way down and had somebody else who can take a walk, can see a couple more pitches as a 2-hitter. But Pedro's way too long to react to what he's seeing in front of him. And don't even get me started with the pitching changes. You see a pitcher, I think there was a Lance Lynn start where he was cruising. I think he had a bunch of strikeouts or a no-hitter going in the 7th inning. But he was nearing his tire point. He was tired the inning before. He didn't have anybody warming up in the 7th inning to start that 7th inning up. And then Lance subsequently, I think, gave up 4 runs in that inning and either lost that game or put the White Sox in a really bad spot instead of having a guy ready, say, hey, Lance, I know you're doing X, Y, and Z, having a good game. I'm going to have somebody throwing just in case you falter, you get tired, et cetera, et cetera. And then have somebody come in when he gets up 1 hit or walk or something like that. But he's just too late to react. And I don't know if he's deferred to Ethan Katz, but that's what I would do if I was a first-year manager. I would defer to my pitching coach to make the pitching changes that I would see. And if I felt something at a time, something in my gut, I would maybe, usurp Ethan Katz in that point and say, hey, man, I'm going to go out there and take him out. Is somebody ready type of thing. But I don't think he utilizes Ethan Katz well enough, or Ethan Katz is not doing the job well enough, because that pitching staff, as far as the pitching changes, have been bad this year. And so I think he should be a one and done, but I see him coming back because Rick Hahn is probably coming back.
Well, I have a question for you, or a theory. So Rick Renteria, he was a quote unquote rebuild manager, and when they got rid of him and brought Tony in, they brought in a bunch of veteran guys. They then have Tony. It falls flat on its face. Then they bring in Ricky Renteria version 2.0, but he's still got veterans in the clubhouse. So he's kind of walking around on eggshells and not making the changes that he wants to make with the ball club. And this is what you get from that. I mean, not only do you have first-time manager who has growing pains of trying to figure, it's like no matter how much you think you know about being a manager, you don't know anything about being a manager until you're a manager. So, he's going through his first season, but then he's trying to deal with these clubhouse issues where you've got these guys who are set in their ways and whatever, and this is the result of that. It's just bad management in general. So
that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But
I can't really
you need to have
sorry
about that. Go ahead, Danny. Sorry.
No, I'm just basically saying I can't put a finger on any of it really. When Pedro was hired, we had everybody and their brother putting, every, paid writer out there, every blogger out there, everybody that knew anything about that hiring process and seen and heard anything, seen that, Pedro Grifol was an analytics driven guy, and he was a scout at one point in his career, and he was a bench coach, and he was a minor league coach, all these things, and all the things that he said sounded fantastic. And we didn't see, I mean, not even one iota of any of that really come together. There were so many of these different hats that he had worn in his career before becoming the manager of the White Sox that you would have thought you would see at least one of those things come through. And I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I have not seen a single thing come through. And then, like Ian says, Ian asked me the same question, actually, was it last week or the week before, about, thinking if I was, am I thinking I'm going to see Pedro come back? And I kind of followed suit with your answer, Herb, with, with this White Sox organization is loyal to a fault. We've seen it time and time again where guys should be let go and they don't. They just get moved, whether it's a lateral move or even a promotion to get them out of the spot that they're in, which seems absolutely ridiculous to me. Like, if I do my job badly, I don't get promoted, right? I don't get I don't get a better label put in front of my name. I don't get that title. I don't get more money. I get canned,
Yep.
And this team doesn't seem to operate that way. But the fact that he came in, he just seemed completely unprepared for what he was going to have to deal with. I don't know if it was, upper management handcuffing him, or, the players in the locker room, the clubhouse. We've heard about all the issues. But my answer to Ian is just like you say, if Rick Hahn is still there, and now we're hearing about these meetings, we're hearing about these interviews, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the show here, but we're hearing these things. I basically said, like, I am pretty sure they're probably going to have a little sit down with him, and they're going to say, why should we keep you after all of this? And literally, I feel like it's going to be as easy as saying, you know what? I had those attitude problems. I had guys who were, kind of irreverent towards the changes that I want to make. And, we heard about rules that were going to be put into place before the season. And then we get, Keenan Middleton come out and say there were no rules, and I feel like Pedro can come back and say, well, you know what? I did have rules. I just couldn't enforce them because they had these supposed veteran leadership guys that just didn't want to buy into any of it. So, I feel like he could do that in an interview before the season's over. Apparently they're conducting these interviews right now. But I feel like he could come in and say, "Hey, I need another season where I can instill my philosophies and my way of going about things in the baseball life with the White Sox organization." My only concern is everything that you brought up in your argument against them is absolutely true. And what difference is a year going to make? What difference is an off season going to make? And what difference is, like you say, there's only a handful of slots really that are going to be available. Most of them pitching slots. How much of a difference is it going to make in the culture of this team? And are they going to be able to adapt a winning attitude? And I really don't see it.
Yeah.
I agree. That it's just bad. It's just sad that we know that it's not going to change. Nothing's going to change until it actually does, and then we're going to have some hope. And then the thing is, if they fire Kenny and or Rick Hahn, they're just going to bring in Chris Getz, who also unqualified for the job I think he has, and unqualified for the job we might get. Or Jeremy Haber, which I don't know Jeremy Haber. I don't know how he operates, but he's been in the White Sox organization for such a long time. I assume he operates like his general manager does, and as executive vice president. So it's just going to be recycled stuff, as you said. And Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams are going to get the Gar Pax thing. One's going to get fired and off the team. The other one's going to be in some advisory role, some super money guy who just goes around and greets the fans and such. Because John Paxton's still on the Bulls staff. Like, he still gets paid by them. There's no firing in the Reinsdorf thing except for unless you're Gar Forman. Sorry, Gar, you had to leave. I don't know which one's going to be Kenny. If Kenny's Gar or Rick's Gar, but one of them has to leave, please.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious, because they did hire that Sam Mondricohen from the Phillies. And as he's now part of the, part of the operations, maybe, he did a nice job with the Phillies building their analytics situation. I mean, maybe he might be somebody who gets some sort of a look. But, as far as Rick Hahn goes, we can create the, you're talking about some sort of a promotion. We can the VP of Suckage or something. We'll come up with some sort of title.
GM Emeritus. He's just forever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just why not? So the one thing that people say that Rick Hahn has done well for his career has been trading established talent for minor league top end talent. There were quite a few trades made this trade deadline, and we'll keep the one for last. But of those trades. But did you like the trades that were made? Did you think that they got good value for them?
Yeah, I like you said, I think that's what Rick Hahn does well. Like Lucas Giolito and Reynaldo Lopez going to the Angels and getting Carroll back, I think is a steal, absolute steal. Like, I don't know much about him, but rated in the top 50 now or 80.
Well, yeah, they actually bumped him back, but
Yeah, and he's a catcher, switch-hitted catcher, young player. I like that. He's probably not ready for the league until a couple of years, but to get anything from Lucas and Ronaldo, who were on their last deal, and they themselves were part of the rebuilding process, coming over here with Dane Dunning for Adam Eaton. So getting that trade done was great. Same thing with Lance Lynn going out there to LA with Joe Kelly. I guess Nastrini is good. I don't know. I just hear from people like yourselves who do minor league coverage, and so I looked at all the Kylie McDaniels of the world and yourselves, future Sox people, and I was like, okay, most people are giving Rick Hahn a pretty good grade. I gave him like an A- on the trades that he made. Getting Corey Lee for Kendall Graveman going to Houston, I thought was also a steal. Kendall Graveman was going to make a lot of money next year, $8 million, because that's Rick Hahn likes to give $8 million deals to relievers instead of just developing relievers themselves,
which
like
they've
the
done.
Bay Rays do.
Yeah,
exactly. And then getting people off the street like Gregory Santos and Keenan Middleton himself. So getting Corey Lee, a guy that I don't think he's going to be an ass-kickingly great starter or anything special. I think he's just a placeholder for the most part, eventually. But he's a major league catcher. He will be in the major league somewhere, somehow. To get him for a reliever that we weren't going to use and was going to be taking up $8 million of space for next year's team, brilliant move. And then I'm trying to think of the last trade, the fourth trade. But I thought the Rick Hahn did very well, and he deserves plaudits for turning those players who are underperforming with the White Sox into young stars that might perform well for the White Sox in the future. That's where I would have gone a little farther if I was Rick Hahn. I would have entertained whatever Baltimore was talking about. I would have entertained some more deals. Maybe not trade Luis Robert unless I'm like knocked over my seats. Like if Baltimore's giving me their whole minor league system, maybe I got to get rid of Luis Robert.
Yeah.
But I would have, like, with the job security that Rick Hahn has, seemingly, I would have said, nah, rebuild 2.0 or 3.0. We're getting rid of anything that is not tied down, we're getting rid of. We're going to start this thing over again. And maybe this time, instead of when we get to the apex, just going to get one player like Dallas Keuchel, we go and get the top rotation guy, or the John Lester, if you will, what the Cubs did in 2015. Let's go and get John Lester and John Lackey to supplement where our minor league didn't, and make sure that our major league team is stacked while our minor league team keeps on feeding us good young players. But the White Sox neither have good major leaguers nor good minor leaguers. But I would have went with the approach of just getting rid of most of the players and then restacking and the deck and seeing where I can go, because he's not getting fired. So why are you like all soft and trying to? We're going to compete in 2024. How?
Yeah.
With lack of, well, you don't have that much movement. You're going to get some great player. You're going to get that guy I didn't want to talk to about as a starter. No, you're not getting him. So you're not coming back to the top of the heap because these players are somehow going to stay healthy and or play at their 90th percentile. That's what the White Sox count on. Staying healthy, and everybody performs like they did in 2005. Everybody at their apex.
So, do you want to remind him, Ian, of that last deal that he could not remember?
There's actually a few.
Because I want, with the big one, I know you know.
We'll get that in a second.
I'm really curious as to where Herb.
I'm curious as well
on that one, because that one's a polarizing one for White Sox fans.
I get so many. I get so many tweets. So there was Keenan Middleton for Juan Carrella, and then there was the Dodgers with the international money, $1 million of international money for Maximo Acosta and Aldrin Batista, and then there was Luis Patino as well.
Yeah, I remember.
Former number one overall.
Oh, the White Sox. Rick Hahn loves those guys.
It's ridiculous how many good top prospects of yesteryear this franchise has. But yeah, we'll move on to the other trade, and I want to know which side of the fence you're on. Jake Burger. Everybody, I love Jake Burger. I've been watching Jake Burger since 2018, 17. And he gets traded for a left-handed pitcher who has been mentioned as the best pitcher in the minor leagues in 2021, when he had a .095 batting average against left-handers and 193 against right-handers. Add TJ. He's back now. He's only at like 50 innings. So obviously he's hitting that TJ wall on that year of rehab. So he's not doing well. I get so many tweets about Jake Burger and how the White Sox could trade away Jake Burger for Jake Eder. What side of the fence are you on? Are you mad as hell and gonna let everybody know about it? Or like, what's where are you at on this?
I love Jake Burger. I love the player. I love the person. And I said as much when the trade went down. I was caught off guard that he was getting traded, but I was, as I said, trade everybody who's available to be traded. especially players that are not going to have a spot next year, and that's what Jake Berger is. Yoan Moncada is coming back. He's going to make $24 million. There's no spot for Jake Berger except for when Yoan inevitably gets hurt next year. Then he can play third base. And I know he played a little second before he got traded.
Yeah,
but
nobody's taking that contract.
Exactly. But when I saw what they're getting back, and like you're saying, Jake Eder, I was like, that money, that sounds good. Like, we got an actual prospect that could hit. It's a boom or bust prospect, but like you said, he's coming off of TJ, and he's pitching, and he pitched well. I think sometimes with the Marlins, with the Marlins farm team. I know he hasn't pitched that well with the White Sox, but it's a new organization. It's the guy's getting traded. He's a young guy. He's probably just his head's going 1,000 miles per minute.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna give him this offseason, come back next year full and ready to go for the 2024 season. I expect him to be in the minor leagues that whole year and building up his innings base, and then maybe being a name you could talk about in 2025. And like you said, he's a long-term fix for a guy in Jake Berger who I thought is good this year, but I've seen so many Jake Bergers in this organization. I've seen the Josh Fields. I've seen Daniel Palka. I've seen Avisail Garcia. I've seen Carlos Quentin. I've seen them all, and the White Sox held on to all those guys way too late. It's better to trade a guy a year too early than a year too late. And to get Jake Eder back for Jake Berger, I'm fine with it. I am not a guy that looks at the results. Like, people always look at that Fernando Tatis trade and blame Rick Hahn for it. I don't blame Rick Hahn for that trade. Fernando Tatis didn't play stateside when he traded him, and he wasn't the guy.
And he wasn't good.
Yes, and we know that Fernando Tatis got a little help. He had to get rid of his acne / ringworm, whatever. And so I don't blame him because the results turned into bad. Like, at the time, no one was saying, we traded away Fernando Tatis Jr. No one said that. Not one person. Everybody's like, we got James Shields type of thing. But I was like, we got rid of Eric Johnson. Thumbs up trade, Rick Hahn. But I didn't, at the time of the trade, I was like, it hurts that Jake Berger is going somewhere else. But what are the White Sox doing with Jake Berger in the future?
That's what I said.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Like, they're not doing anything with him. Like, it's better to get somebody for him. And that's partly because of Rick's fault, because of the roster construction of this team is terrible. But as I talked about sunk costs, like, he knows that Jake Berger on this team in the future, yes, he might run into a couple home runs, but what is he? What does he do next year for the 2024 White Sox? Nothing. Sit on the bench, come in the game every once in a while, pops a home run, strikes out a lot. That doesn't do anything for you. Jake Eder, he might be a top of the rotation pitcher. I'd rather roll the dice on that guy than keep on with Jake Berger and just like, oh, okay, he's not playing because Yoan's got to play because he's $24 million. Yeah, we knew this. The contract's been signed for a long time. So, yeah, I will not, even in the future, if Jake Berger goes on to be an all-star and all this stuff that happens, I will not place blame on Rick Hahn because I thought at the time there was a good trade, and I still think it's a good trade.
So you're telling me that you think that roster construction won't allow for another DH on this team? Is that what you're saying?
Oh no, they will always take a guy that can't play any other position. That'll be perfect. They're like, oh man, you can't play any position except for first base? Come on our team, please.
Well, I think Wander Franco will probably be looking for a job. So. Yeah.
Man.
Him and Clev can hang out in the off season together.
Yikes. So Bob Nightingale threw a tweet out a few a day now ago, I think, more or less saying that the front office jobs for the White Sox were being interviewed for and evaluated on a just judging by results, I guess, and proof of process, I guess, proof of concept of how they're supposed to be doing things. Then Bruce Levine says that Jerry Reinsdorf said, well, this isn't anything that we would normally do in a year where we underperformed. So hearing that you thought yesterday probably that Rick Hahn was interviewing himself for his own job or however that was going, and now hearing that now it's not anything out of the norm. We know that we suck, and that's why we're interviewing, but it doesn't necessarily mean that anything's going to happen. Is anything meaningful coming this offseason from movement in the front office?
I would surely hope so, but I don't think so. I think these guys are going to be back. Jerry's committed to these people. He's at I don't know if he's at the end of his life, but he's up there in ages. And so I don't think he wants to start over with a new general manager or executive vice president of baseball ops. Maybe they fire, he allows Kenny Williams to fire or reassign Rick Hahn somewhere. But as I said, they're just going to rehire or put somebody up there that doesn't, deserve the job. And Kenny Williams continues to do the job, or he takes over ultimately. And you can tell what the moves that Kenny does, because then we bring in like former athletes and such. Somebody played some football, then he'll come in and do some jobs like Mitchell and Joe Borchard, those type of guys. But I don't think anything fundamentally changes with the White Sox this offseason, even if they do fire these people. Now, I do want some accountability. So if they do actually fire Rick Hahn, I'll be happy that they did it. Not happy that a person's losing their job, but happy that finally there's accountability for being one of the worst GMs in baseball. Like, he took this job, and I only think like two other general managers have had a longer tenure than him. And both of those general managers, Brian Cashman, I forgot the other one, maybe John Mozeliak, have both won World Series. Both of them, easily. And Rick Hahn has his job security, even though he's only won 2 playoff games in his tenure. And has, 11 seasons? I think 9 of those are either at 500 or below. Like, there's no reason for him to still have his job. So I would be happy that he finally got what he deserved. But also, the man has a job, has a family and such. I don't want him to lose his livelihood, but he deserves it. So I think nothing fundamentally changes about the organization that needs to happen, because we all see this organization's a bad organization and it rots from the head down. I don't want to be like the Sox fans that I don't think they root for Jerry's demise, but are rooting for him to die or anything like that. I want the man to live a whole, full, healthy life and do whatever he wants. But I don't want him to own my favorite baseball team anymore, because we know it doesn't work. He's too stubborn to change what is obviously wrong. And so I know that I'm going to be cheering for a broken franchise until he sells the team. And so I'm just going to be content with that and move on and know that nothing's going to change. If he surprises me somehow, I would love that. Please, Jerry, your later years, be like Mike Ilitch. Go all out. Spend all the money you can.
Can't take it with you.
General manager. Exactly. Yeah, Michael's got enough money himself. He'll be running the Bulls when you're gone. So you're good to go. Your family would be good to go. So I would just want to have, if I was in my later years, I would want to have a little last hurrah. See if I can do it. I'm sure Mike Ilitch, even though they didn't win the World Series with the Detroit Tigers,
they made noise.
He probably went to his grave like that. Yeah, no regrets. I pushed the pedal to the metal. It didn't work out, but you know what? Sometimes life doesn't work out like that. And I'm sure every Detroit Tiger fan is like, thank you, Mike Ilitch. We appreciate you. And his legacy in Detroit is as such. It's like Mike Ilitch did whatever it took to win championships here in Detroit, even though it didn't work out for the Tigers. Jerry's legacy, when he leaves from the White Sox, it's going to be a bad one, no matter what, unless he wins the World Series again. And even then, people are still like, man, those years between 2005 and 2000 whatever year were rough.
I wouldn't be wrong. Yeah, it's like as far as the Tigers went, they made noise. They had fun. They didn't ultimately win it, but winning a World Series is hard.
Very hard.
At least they put in the effort and made conscious decisions to make the team better. The thing that bothers me the most about the White Sox is that, they bumped up their payroll so much last year, but yet they don't want to spend the $3 million a year on player development to hire more people, but they'll raise the payroll, signing washed up free agents to, $8 million, $10 million contracts and signing, 8 of them.
$60 million bullpen.
Yikes.
Do they still have one of the lightest and, like an analytic department and their research and development department, one of the least employed in the major leagues?
Yeah. So,
as far as we know.
The thing about that is that they have a bunch of the guys in the system don't get counted towards that analytics department because they have a particular title. It's not that they don't necessarily do some of the things that somebody that else in a different system would have a different title. It's not that they don't do those things. It's just that they do something else is their main job, but this is like their secondary thing. It's like Chris Johnson. Chris Johnson, who's now the third hitting coach for the White Sox. Last year is the hitting coach for the Charlotte Knights, but ultimately his main job for the entire organization is he's the head of biometrics, for the hitting side. And nobody, the only reason I knew this is because I signed up my kid and myself for Andy Barkett's hitting school and training and stuff. And he did these webinars where he had like Devin DeYoung and Cam Seitzer and all the guys from the White Sox system on his streams. And so I found out like all sorts of really interesting stuff and, all sorts of cool things that these guys do. But the thing is that their titles don't match up with, say somebody with the Rays. However, we know for a fact that the Rays have, like 25 people on staff doing that stuff. And the White Sox definitely do not have that. So, yeah, I would assume that they're probably still on the lower end of the spectrum, but they might not be the lowest. But, I mean, at this point, who really knows? Because just like everything else with the White Sox, they do as much as they can to possibly to blur the lines of where you're looking. You're looking to figure out.
That leads me to a question for you, Ian, actually.
Yeah.
Having said all of that about, these guys that are in different roles that don't necessarily give them the title of, someone in an analytical, job or being part of the analytical department. Do you feel like not having a singular focus on one specific thing does something to take away from the analytics side of what the White Sox are doing? Do you feel like
for a guy like Chris Johnson, yeah, probably, because you've got him in one spot. You had him in Charlotte all last year. Now, like when you had guys that would go and talk to him in Charlotte, when they got put in on rehab assignments or they'd, if they got sent down because they weren't performing well, like Gavin Sheets. When they go down there, now they don't have him to go talk to. I mean, granted, Gavin Sheets has got him in Chicago and whatever, but I mean, if you don't have multiple people doing this kind of work, it makes I would assume it makes it a little bit more difficult. Now, I mean, that said, the guys that, I've talked about this many times on our stream. I feel like the development side of the White Sox minor league org has gotten light years better in the last 2 years. But, if there's not enough guys to spread out and to go to each place and, put these guys in check or to check up on what they're doing, then, it's like your checks and balances are kind of out of whack. You need to have enough people that can go and take care of all this stuff, and they just don't. So I guess that kind of answers that, I hope.
No, absolutely.
So thank you so much for coming on, Herb. It's been awesome.
Thank you for having me. It's been awesome.
I mean,
appreciate you guys having me on.
We've wanted to have you on forever, and for whatever
reason,
we've
actually been talking about it for quite some time.
Yeah,
we have.
Yeah, I've had a couple of conflicts with my softball and White Sox play on Mondays, but I don't care about the game today or any of these games going forward. As long as we see development, I'm the opposite of Pedro. I don't care about wins. I care about development.
You and me both.
Yeah, you're not going to find an argument here.
Where can people find you?
They can find me on Twitter, Ecknerwall23. That is just Lawrence, my last name spelled backwards, with 2-3 for Robin Ventura, my favorite player ever, who, as I told with Tim Anderson, after the fight that Robin Ventura had with Nolan Ryan, and then after his managerial stint with the White Sox, people don't think about his career anymore. They think about him getting beat up by Nolan Ryan and him sucking as a manager as a White Sox.
It's unfortunate.
And I think Tim, exactly. He was an awesome baseball player, and Tim, Silver Slugger, won a batting title, was an All-Star starter. Be thought about as the guy who got knocked out by Jose Ramirez. So, Actonwall23, usually on all the socials. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and also TikTok, which I barely do anything but post my dog.
Yeah, my favorite guy when we were in high school was Blackjack McDowell. Now only everybody thinks of him as a tinfoil hat wearing crazy person. So
Yeah.
there's that. White Sox at Daily White Sox on Twitter for us. I am at iEskridge. That's at Danny Miller WSD. You can find us at whitesoxdaily.substack.com, and you can also find us on YouTube and Facebook. Just search White Sox Daily, and you'll find us. This will be available in podcast form tomorrow morning and also on YouTube. We thank you guys for coming in and watching and for listening in podcast. And you guys have a great evening. My name is Ian Eskridge for Herb Lawrence and Danny Miller. Thank you for listening. Have a great night.